Good afternoon. This is the Instructional Policy Committee. Welcome, everyone. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Caver, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, I'm going to share the agenda for today. So our first order of business is to review the minutes from the last meeting. So in the board agenda, everyone can see the meeting minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on August 7th. If there are no questions about the previous meeting minutes, then I will move on. All right, hearing none, I'll move on to our topic for today. So before I give my presentation today I will be presenting. So before I give my presentation today on the preliminary results from OST from 2023, I will just want to go over a few items that are going to be on the agenda on Monday. First, I just want to bring to your attention that we received some additional funding for 21st Century grant, which funds our after-school programming. And so we did receive additional dollars this year. And so you will see that as item 19.2 this year. And those funds that are coming in currently will help our schools, the schools that are funded with this grant are Betty Jane, Finley, King, Portage Path, Schumacher, and Cyberlane. So I just wanted to make sure you saw that. Yes. Betty Jane, Finley, King, Portage Path, Schumacher, and Cyberlane.
So that's $800,000 altogether. Am I reading that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so those are the new schools that receive the funds. All right, another item that I just want to bring to your attention, actually there are two more that are listed under business affairs, and one of them is 23.2 currently, and that is that they're using Title I funds to purchase more Promethean boards. So we have been replacing the technology, some of our outdated smart boards within the school buildings, and so those buildings that do have extra funds from Title I and some SQUIG dollars we had also previously, we have been in the process of removing those. So this is for the purchase of 26 additional Promethean boards that are going in the classrooms. And also, the Milo Range Training Systems is it's a simulator program that is being added to the criminal justice pathway at Garfield. We used this in the past with our other criminal justice pathway, but now it's time to add it because we're adding that pathway to Garfield CLC. So it's really exciting because of the simulation suite that this comes with in terms of the scholars will be able to use. So that is also on there. We use the Expanding Opportunities Grant for that purchase. All right, and so as always, I'm going to go out of order just in case there are a lot of questions on the report card. But as always, I'm going to skip down to updates just to remind you that you can see the CCAA update here from Mrs. Zebright, and then the update on the Family Resource Center from Mrs. Sykes. I do want to pull up just the FRC update because, as you all know, we are opening up the Higher Family Resource Center in the Elliott cluster, and there's some information on this update in regards to the Fall into the Family Resource Center meet and greet, which is happening tomorrow at Higher, if anybody has an opportunity to stop by, and just to see, there will be another one on September 20th. And then a couple other activities that they are starting over there. So we're moving right along, but I just wanted to bring that one to your attention because it's our latest FRC. So you could look back at that at the agenda whenever you have an opportunity. All right. Okay. So now today's topic is to go over our preliminary state report card information. This presentation will be given at the full board meeting next Monday as well. There will probably be some updates by the time I present next Monday because our progress data is coming in this week. But again, this is just preliminary information that we wanted to share with you all today. So as a reminder, last year we got a new state report card. The look and the design of the state report card was changed. So this will be our second year with this new format. As you all may recall, we now get graded in stars instead of letter grades. Also this year, there are 6 components to the report card, but once again, the 6th component, the college, career, workforce, and military readiness, will not be rated until the 2025 report card. So we will not have a rating in that area. They're just tracking data right now. And then also, so gap closing, achievement, progress, graduation, and early literacy will be rated on this report card.
Pardon the interruption, do we know what data they're tracking for Category 6?
There is exactly, I think there were 11 areas that they track. So we do know the information that they're looking at.
Okay.
It does have to do with like industry credentials. It has to do with ACT scores. There's a list of items I can get
So
for you.
not for the Monday board meeting, but maybe as a follow-up, would love to know, to your point, we could kind of list out those categories for 6, because if we know what they're tracking, I'm sure we've got data on how we're doing in those areas. Now we may not know how they're going to get graded,
Right.
but we would know, hey, this is our current state in Category 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I can get that information to you all. And most of it is being tracked by Mrs. Ebright's department.
Roger that.
So.
Okay.
And then also this year, we will get an overall rating, and we did not receive the overall rating last year. So those are the updates for this year's report card. The items that we believe that are in there exactly. I don't know all of them off the top of my head. I'll get those for you all. All right. Okay, just a reminder, if you get 3 stars, that is meeting the state standard. Anything above 3 stars mean that you're doing better than expected. And then anything below 3 stars means that you have some challenges or some needs. So that's the rating system, and it goes from 1 through 5. Also this year, in each category, you only get a star rating of between 1 through 5, but the overall rating can give a half scale rating. So you can get a 1.5 or a 2.5 overall, and that's something that's new for us. As I mentioned previously, we're not getting a rating on the 6th component, so therefore they divide up 100%. They divide up the other 5 components to ensure that they equal 100%. So as you can see, achievement, which is how our scholars actually perform on the assessment, and progress, and that is how much they have progressed from one year to the next. Those 2 are weighted more heavily at 29% each than gap closing, early literacy, and graduation, which all 3 of those are 14% apiece. So I'm going to jump right into the achievement component first. And so what I'm going to do here is to compare our scores in each category that I can to the previous year. Right now, we believe that our performance index score is 61.2, which equals 2 stars, as compared to last year when I came here, our performance index score was 58.7. And so we have made an improvement of 2.5 points. That leads us to 2 stars. I have put up in the right-hand corner, very small, just so that you could see it, the actual conversion of how many points we get, and then we have to divide it by the maximum allowable points, and then that equals a percent. The maximum allowable points fluctuates under the new report card. It used to be just 120 points at all times, but now it changes every year. It's based on the top 2% of district scores in the state. So then we don't always exactly know what the denominator is going to be until the scholars actually take the assessment. That leads us to 56.2%, which, as you can see, equals 2 stars. So we did have improvement. I do want to state, just for the record, that back in 2019, our average improvement or points across the district was about 2 to 3 points at that time as well. So looks like we are well on our way to getting back on track to where we were pre-pandemic.
Well, I'm sorry, what was 2019? You said 2019 was what?
The improvement from one year to another, the amount of points.
Roger that. Okay. So you're saying from 2019 to 20, so from 2018 to 2019, it was
Yes.
2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Points.
Points, not percent, but points. Okay. And so how do points percent? Okay. So see here so in this scenario here, we're saying we improved by 2.5 points.
Points.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yes. Sometimes, there is a distinction, and sometimes we work with our schools on that. The points are achieved by you get so many points for the level that the scholar performs at on the assessment.
Well,
and then,
so I asked my question because your rating scale is in percentages. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was asking, like, does this represent 61.2%? Is our grade?
It's not. It is not. So the percentage over there, and I hope that part does not, I was trying to be more helpful, that's why I included it. But the percentage over there, it shows that we divide our points by the maximum allowable points, and then that's how we get our percentage. Okay. And then I was just showing you the scale so that you could see how we get our stars using that percentage.
Right, okay, so okay. So if I'm looking at percent improvement, 2.5 points is probably not even 1%.
Yeah, I looked it up. It was about 1.5%.
Yeah. So my preference, we can leave that here, but I'd like to see us, if we could somehow. I'll ask the question before we come up with that. So I'm going to ask that question, like, hey, if I'm just doing the math, that difference between 61.2 and 58.7, so it's 120 points, 108 point scale. So yes, so about 1.5% makes sense.
But it's important. It is important. The reason we keep it in points is because that's how our scholars' performance is given to us. We get points for the assessment depending on what level they perform at, and so our schools recognize that we get points for every value. So even if a scholar, like if they're advanced or advanced plus, we get more points for that. If they're proficient, there's a certain level of points. So it's important that we are looking at every child and seeing what they bring and how many points that they score. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So next we have gap closing, and gap closing is in percent. So last year our preliminary gap closing information. Last year's gap closing we scored 35.4%, which equals 3 stars. This year, our gap closing, right now, the preliminary data is at 34%, which would still be 3 stars. There are 4 measures that are not yet rated because we were waiting on the progress information to come in this week. We will have that information probably updated when I present next week. As a reminder, gap closing has several indicators up underneath it to determine if you how you get to that percentage. And some of the areas that are highlighted are the ones that we are still waiting to get our final score and be determined to see if we actually receive those points. But the ones that we have received already, there are a couple that I want to highlight for you. So we got a full 5 points for the gifted identification and services. There are chronic absenteeism. As you all know, we presented on that as we talk about attendance and the new chronic absenteeism. And we received a full 5 points this year for meeting our chronic absenteeism goal. So we definitely want to point that out. It's a testament to the work of Dr. Lash and her department, as well as all of our school buildings, and the work that has been put in there to try to meet that goal.
So when do we, so the 4 that are to be determined, when did you say we're getting those, in those 4 areas?
Sometime this week.
So that's going from the state or?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
So you have this slide for gap closure. Do you have a similar slide for achievement? Because you show the achievement points,
Mhm.
and then we move to gap closure points, and then you show us the underlying, under the hood for gap closure.
Mhm.
Do you have an under the hood slide for achievement as well?
I do not. We can look into it to see, but achievement is every single test that we have from grades 3 through, and then every scholar and how they actually perform. So we'll have to look at.
Indicators that are broken out for achievement like there is for.
No, it's just points for each scholar. So each scholar gives whatever assessment. If I am proficient, it might be 1 point or 1.3 points.
Example we're talking about.
So when I take the test, if I'm the student and I take the test, the Ohio State exam. Right? So a 3rd grade scholar takes the ELA test and a math test. When I take the ELA test, depending on how I score on the exam, whether I'm limited, basic, proficient, advanced, or advanced plus, there's a point value assigned to how I perform.
Roger that. Okay.
So we'll have that for however many scholars we have taken the assessment.
Gotcha. So the point there that you're showing, that's the average of English, ELA, and math. Is that 61.2? That's a compilation of both?
It's of all the points. Let me go back. Am I going backwards? Yes. Okay. Of all the points we received in the district, the way that it adds up.
Right, but a student's being
Yes.
tested on. So yeah, so it's their
everything.
overall score is what you're getting. So
Yes.
so we're not seeing it broken out by ELA math for purposes
Correct.
here. But do we have the breakout data?
We do have the breakout data.
So for example, so again, I just want to understand, seeking to understand. But if I was curious, so this is a component rating scale here. So if I wanted to know, well, what's my math percentage? Are we, so for example, overall, are we like 4 stars in math and 1 star in ELA? Just making it hypothetical. And so the composite score is that's why I'm a 2-star. So like, so just so you can understand like the underlying data, like how are we doing by topic here? And you could even ask that question by grade too. Like, so what are the grade levels that are, and then further down, like we start looking at it in a school roll up, like do we have, because again this is district wide,
Right.
but I'd be curious to know like, well, for each of our schools, well, what's their PI?
Right.
2022.
And they each have one.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
they do.
So-
Generally here, I won't bring all 47 buildings and go through that, so we just give you like the district level data.
Yeah.
So I can work with the team to think about what would be appropriate in this setting.
No, I'm with you, not showing every single.
Okay.
But I'm saying, but the board, I think the board would like to see the underlying data. So I'd like to see it sent out to us that it does have all the schools in it. That way we can look, and if we have a question, we say, hey, if there are areas of opportunity, because we're going to get to presenting on individual schools here pretty soon. Right?
Sure.
So we're
Sure.
not going to be able to hide which schools are challenging in their performance. That's But I want the board to be able to ask you questions
Yeah.
offline via email. Hey, I saw I get a question about school X or school Y.
Right.
So I'm with you though. We can't do that. The money, that's too much. That'd be
Okay.
a 4-hour meeting. Try to go through all that. So okay.
Yes.
Because the school performance is public.
It is.
When it comes out, that's public knowledge. So anyone can find this, whether we presented it at a board meeting or not. But I was just curious for what Derek's question was, because when you talk about per school, because I think that should be internal things that the board looks at and then addresses as far as our questions, that it should be. I'm not necessarily agreeing that it's a whole public meeting per school, but however you do it. But to your point, when you look at the buildings, just for clarity, because you can get it down to even from the buildings to see how the buildings are performing and the areas in which the buildings are struggling, like if the lower scores were geometry, or it can get that specific. And I feel like that's what you were asking about, like like the detail, and the reports are that detailed. There's the individual student report, then there's the building reports, which we can talk like later, you and I'm kind of thinking that what I was hearing you say is that if I want to look at overall performance, where is our stronger areas and our weakest areas, that will make it as plain as possible. And the state gives us those reports at the building level, and students get them at the individual level for where individual students are struggling. I think for the matter of this board, though, when we look at the building level, the different building levels as far as clusters, that we may see trends, that then gives us some insight on action plans and where the strongest gaps are. Like if this cluster struggles more with mathematical, and we see that it starts to dip when they get into geometry concepts, but maybe they're stronger in algebra, then we can more look into the resources that's more needed.
So that's where so let me get back in front of the microphone, but that's where I was ultimately going, right? Because in my head as a board member, as we're making budgetary decisions around what we do and don't approve from a programmatic standpoint, from a funding standpoint, at day's end, you want to connect the metrics to the work, right? So I'm assuming that as you get to the end, you're going to have, hey, so our areas of opportunity were X, Y, and Z, and here's our plan for how we're going to move the data on X, Y, and Z, right? I'm assuming that's where you're going towards the end. That's why I was trying not to jump too far ahead. But that's in my head, that's where we've got to at least end up. And so, and I do think, listen, the public data thing is touchy, right? Because there are people in the community that feel like, hey, 2/3 of my tax dollars go to fund Akron Public Schools. My child goes to X school. I want to know how that school is doing. And I should not have to put a public records request in and find out how my kid's school's doing. Like, that's something that I should be able to go watch a board meting on and see that data presented to me, right? So,
They can't find it. They can't find it.
No. Yeah. So no. Again, to your point, it's all public data, right? But I'm saying, but the average person probably not going to know how to find that. It's easy for us to go find it because we know how to do it, because this is what we do, right? So. Yeah. So do we post individual schools on our website?
Yeah, we have in the past, so I have to look and see. I'm not sure, but yeah, the report card data, there's usually a link to there that will be on our website for you to take you right there.
Oh, perfect.
And then when you go there, you drop down to what building, or type in the building name, and then information comes up for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other places report out on Tuber, you can get the information on how the district is performing on specific schools.
Yeah. Because I think that's a natural follow-up, though, right? The natural follow-up is, well, which of our schools are the most challenged in these areas? And that's a natural. To me, that's a very natural question as a board member to ask. Like, well, it's this school, and this school, right? And I don't think that you're calling a school out to ask that question. Like, well, what are our challenging schools? Because to your point, I can go right to the internet and look it up myself. And what's the difference between me doing that and us talking about it at a public board meeting? Like, to me, they're equivalent. They're really equivalent. So. Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Because that the time on that, because if the goal, we can.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, so my goal today is to just give you all an overview of how the district, it's like a state of the district overall with our report card.
Yeah.
So, but again, anytime, any information you want specific to the buildings, just like you're asking about I'm giving you the performance index score of the district overall.
Yeah.
But I do have the performance index score sitting right here on my computer for each and every building too. So I'll
and
make
that's in
sure
the
that you
spreadsheet? That's
share.
in the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah, if you could email us out the spreadsheet, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Because that's quicker than me going to the website and toggling down, select this school, select this school. Okay, gotcha. Okay, you have a lot to get through. Let me let you
Nope, that's okay.
keep going.
I appreciate the dialogue. All right, so back to gap closing. Two more items that I wanted to point out with the breakdown of gap closing. And that is that we improved compared to last year for our graduation goals there too. So we got 2 additional points with graduation that we did not receive the previous year.
And this also played a role in the extra certificates that I think Ms. Brett was talking about at the last meeting.
So meeting goals, so that all plays a part into it. When you're probably talking about, we were talking about the industry credentials and she was getting, that it helps. So it helped improve our graduation rate for sure. And so, yeah, so some of the areas that we actually met when it came to graduation is we met what the state comes out with goals for us in the area of our English language learners, economically disadvantaged, our students with disabilities. We met the goal for their graduation this year that the state had set, and we did not meet that the previous year. Our scholars that are in the multiracial category, we met the graduation rate goal for them as well this year, and we had not met that previously. So that's why we have 2 additional points this year. And then Black non-Hispanic, we met their graduation rate goal for 2 years in a row. So that's how we come up with 5 points. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And then once again, our English language arts achievement, the point that we received there is for meeting the goal for our Black non-Hispanic students.
We could have got 9, we got 1.
Yes, that's the one goal that we did. We met the state standard, the goal that they gave to us for that area.
Overall, we did it, because it says up to 9 points. We got 1 point?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And that one area was Black Hispanic students?
Black non-Hispanic, yes. Yes,
And then for mathematics, we got 0 out of 9 for achievement?
currently, yes.
Okay.
So that means we did not meet the goal that was set for the students in the subgroups
So we
in that
didn't
area.
goals.
We did not. We did not earn points in math.
Not even for white students?
Correct. Okay. No, All right. So again, just wanted those breakdown to show you the breakdown with gap closure, because all of these things they do have, there are different areas to them that you have to dig into to understand where the points are coming from and how do we actually get there. And I just wanted to make sure I was able to show you all where we get the points from and how we get the percentage. And 34% falls into the category of 3 stars. So that's gap closing.
So one question you probably expect me to ask is, why do you think we lost ground in 2022, 2023? Not the answer today, so that's the question.
So I do know that we did lose some, I can answer it today. I do believe that we lost some ground with our ELL scholars. Last year, we received 5 points out of 5 with our ELL scholars and how they performed, and we did lose some ground there this year. So that's one of the areas. I do believe the other area that we lost ground in a little bit is our gifted performance. So those are areas that we definitely are looking into, and of course, Dr. Dang Nguyen is definitely interested in and working on Loy, not Twan, in terms of how our ELL scholars are performing.
And is the 34, we know that for sure, even though the subgroups are TBD?
No, so it's not the final answer. That's just what it is currently with the areas that have been reported already.
So that could go up.
Okay, and we'll have the information next week with the final numbers. All right, our next category is progress. Again, as a reminder, progress measures the academic performance of students compared to their expected growth. So it's all about holding their place in line in terms of how they perform the previous year and making 1 year's worth of growth as expected. Last year, we got a 2 in progress, and this is the data that we are waiting on. The progress data gives you get a rating in progress itself, and then also, it is also a part of that gap closing data as well. So that's why we're still waiting, and gap closing can be affected by your progress data.
So when we're talking about growth, so this is our growth metric, it's progress.
This is,
So when we're talking about percent growth at the school board, I'm not talking about progress. Is that right?
yes.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess in my head, I guess what I'm trying to translate this into is if I start third grade and I'm a year behind, and I close third grade, and I'm still not on grade level, maybe I'm 0.6 of a year behind, and I'm 4 years behind after third grade, right? So is that reflected? That's my growth.
That's how it would be reflected.
Right. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we translate that? So like, what does that number mean? If I say because it could have been a 5-star, it's only 2.
Correct.
Right. So I'm sorry. Do you have an underlying slide for that?
No, because we don't have the data yet.
Okay.
So there's no data to show for progress. But basically, it is they give you a number, but it is exactly what you say. If you get a 3, that means that they made a year's worth of growth, no matter where you are. So even if you're 2 grade levels behind, it's going to say, did you grow adequately this year? A whole nother year, which you still may be 2 grade levels behind, but did you still grow at a year's rate?
So you didn't lose any progress.
So you didn't lose any progress.
I'm sorry. You didn't lose ground, I should say. Right?
Yes. You made progress, you didn't lose ground. And so if you get above a 3, then you made up, so it's like closing the gap even more, right? You made more growth in that amount of time than what was expected.
So 2-star means that as a district we lost ground.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So do you know how much ground we lost?
I don't have the date.
Like in 2021, 2022, where we have the data.
We have the information of where we scored.
So do you know, like,
We have what we have for 2022, but I don't have the 2023 data yet. And this one, we would have to, this one could not be done directly in a board meeting. Like we would need to work together on a math lesson, because first it is effect size, then it is the magnitude of the effect size. So first you get a score between a -2 to a 2, depending on if all of your data comes back between a -2 to a 2. You're laughing at me. Then that's when you get a 3.
is it what? Is it good too?
If you get your score, which you use your growth performance divided by the growth index and the standard error, it's a real math lesson. But if that number, after you do the math, after they do the math, the statistical behind the scenes, after they do the math, if it comes in between a -2 to a 2, then they consider that, I'm trying to think of like the statistical, like if that considers that like on my normal curve, that you made a year's worth of growth in between a -2 and a 2. Once you get past that, going towards either above the 2 or going below the -2 towards the -3, then that's when they will determine if you're getting a 4 on progress or a 2. So we start out as a 3, and then depending on that mathematical answer determines if you can move up, like you did more than you were supposed to, or if you move down, meaning you didn't do as much. And then the second part of this mathematical equation is the effect size of how much was it statistically different. And that's when they come up with, but what they give us for the most part is if you are 2 or a 3 or 1, in terms of that information.
So it's not like you got to follow the one certain mitigation meeting in order to your point, I'm imagining for minus 2 and 2, this is one certain mitigation here. Once you get out beyond that, to your point now, more than one certain mitigation out on either side, which is the chaos.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I was just giving you that because that was my precursor as a warning that I'm not going to have a lot behind the scenes on progress. Okay? All right. Just want to make sure for that part of it, but there's a calculation to it to determine. But it does signify, like you stated, last year with a 2 means that we lost some ground in that you want to at least be a 3 or above because, of course, you want to at least, you don't want to lose ground at all.
So once you have the data, so let's say it's 2-star, right?
Mm-hmm.
I only have one question. It may require an online math lesson, but my question is if we got 2 stars again, I'm just interested in translating that into like lay terms, right? So like, how much ground did we lose? Did we lose a third of a year's ground, half of a year's ground, 4 years ground? Like, what does that mean? We say that we lost ground, right? But if you get a 3-star, which is what I hope for, at least a 3-star, that means that as a district, we didn't lose ground as a district.
Right.
Okay.
That you're holding your place in line. And so, yes, that's for sure. And so I just went back in my notes so I can make sure I said it right, and I did. But just to repeat, So progress is based on the growth index and the effect size. And the growth index is that's the -2 to the 2, where how certain we are that growth is different from the expected growth. That's when they do the division for us. And then the second part of it is, again, the effect size, which is the magnitude of the growth or the non-growth. And then they do that, you do the calculations, and then it determines, again, where you fall within the categories. Okay?
You gotta consider transient students, transfer students. You gotta consider, the testing environment. Is it a high number of subs in that building that day during testing? Fall off, because then you worry about classroom management, which then it gives almost like a false narrative because it's a snapshot. So if you're gonna dig into really analyzing this, it's all those factors, especially if you see dips. Because sometimes your high performing students, it can happen, especially when it's like, it's just no way that you would dip so significantly within 1 year. Then you have to consider other factors. But when we're getting this large, all of this data, all you see is just this quick snapshot. And it's a horrible snapshot. And unless it takes a lot of getting in the weeds work to get what I believe that you're desiring to see, which is good stuff. But this is not going to get that. The only way to get that is to be to be in buildings, with teachers, understanding what the climate was in the testing period, to get a real answer, and even talk to some kids. Because sometimes, people you may not get the full, but if you had a floor of subs,
The student had a bad night.
but that's one student, right? So that's when you're looking at the individual student. But when I'm talking about building wide, when you see classes, because that's when you're getting those larger numbers. Those are the things. Like, what was that environment? Because one student, now you're looking at the individual. That's not going to drop. That student had a bad area. But when you start looking at clusters of students, and when you see what you're asking for, like building specific, then it shows you a whole journey. Right? It's showing you the journey from
The elementary building to the middle school building, then to the high school building. And that's where it gets into that, I hear you talking about, okay, so what needs to be met? Because we see in this cluster, math is a struggle, but in this cluster, it's not. Or writing,
Well, you also have like grade level too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing too, right? I mean, you go start looking back, you want to see this year's 12th graders. What's their growth been for the last 3 years? To your point, do we just have a bad year, or has it been negative downward spiral?
And then what's the transfer rate? How many of those 12th graders come from this cluster and matriculated throughout this cluster? How many of our high performers, we'll call them, right, that started in this cluster transferred to another cluster or out of district?
That's why the pharmacy is so powerful, because it's the same kids every year. That's why the data is so valuable. It's the same one entry point. If I get 100 kids in third grade, get 4 move to the moon, now I got 96 in fourth grade. It's the same 96 kids that were there fifth grade unless kids move. But no new kids come in. So I lose 4 kids going to fourth grade. There's no transient, right? I didn't add 4 more kids in. You can only lose kids. But it's the same cohort of kids. You know, and that's why I know when he pulled that data for the control group, it was that number gets smaller over time too because he looked at the kids that would have been eligible in third grade and followed that cohort all the way through 8th grade. Now, some of those kids left the district, so that number got smaller, just like the promise number got smaller. That was an apples to apples comparison, which is why that data is so powerful. Telling the story, talking about what the journey's been over a period of time. You know. Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries. There's one last piece to progress before I move on, and that is that progress ends up being a 3-year, I don't want to call it average, but they take 3 years worth of data to come up with our final score. So this year, your current year progress data is weighted at 67%, but that number 2 that we received last year still carries with us. So it is 33% this year of our grade that we receive. I said grade, but I mean stars. So just so you know that it used to be 3 years total. They have a different weight to it. Since now we have 2 years worth of data. I think I had mentioned this before when I was saying that I considered, when we were given I Promise, I was talking about last year, I considered a valid and reliable year's worth of data, and then this year will be as well. So the state started over as well, and last year was our progress score was only based on last year. Now this is our second year. Our current year's data is worth 67% of this score, but we still carry 33% comes from whatever we already achieved last year.
Yeah, to that point, that's why, with the I Promise, that's why we're looking at a comparison, because the control group is dealing with the same exact methodology.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yes.
So that's why, I see your point, but that's why you got to compare it, right? So because the same group would have gone through the same exact stuff, same exact methodology would change.
Yes, and so I was just bringing up the fact that it's about 2 years. Why, when I say I'm looking at data, I'm only comparing this year and last year because of all the changes and because of COVID and things like that. So the state kind of has done the same thing when it comes to progress. We only compare last year and this year. And then next year, when we get a full 3 years, it's always a rolling 3 years. When we get a full 3 years, it'll be your current year's worth 50%, and your previous 2 years are worth 25% each. So just knowing that this is a measure that even if you have one bad year, it still follows you for up to 3 years. So it's a part of your data. It's not just one and done.
That's the same in healthcare.
Okay.
During the states over 3 years.
Yep. All right. So I just wanted to share that information with you all. All right. Okay, we have 2 more categories to dig into or to review. This one is early literacy. So it is measured in percent, and early literacy last year we scored 54.2%, which was 1 star, and this year we scored 57.6%. And which equals 1 star. You need 58%, so we were 0.4% away from getting that, and it doesn't round up. So therefore, we did not get 2 stars. This data, again, I just want to point out, though, that it is what we call in arrears. So basically, part of the data, let me break it down for you on the next slide. There are 3 areas to coming up with that rating. And so part of it is like I said, in arrears, but I'll start with what's current. What's current is the number of scholars that pass the OST, proficient or above. And as you can see, we went up to 44.6% as compared to last year at 40%. The component weight is 40% of that is what comes up to our actual early literacy component. So that's how we get the calculation. The promotion of fourth grade, we promoted 99.9% of our scholars, meaning that they met the iReady cut score for promotion or the OST sub score, or they were promoted because of House Bill 33. And so we were at 99.9%, and then that accounts for 35% of this component. And then the part that is in arrears is the improving literacy. If you've heard people talk about RIMPs, our scholars are put on a RIMP when they are not on track to be proficient in reading. It grades K to 3. And so from fall to fall, we take an assessment. In this case, it's iReady. And it is there's a cut score, and it determines on if scholars have met the score in order to be on or off of a RIMP. And so moving scholars off of those reading improvement monitoring plans is how we are evaluated. But what they're doing right now is looking at the data. Right now, our scholars are taking iReady. And so for this 25% of this early literacy indicator, we will know that information by next month, because it is looking at the scholars if they were on a RIMP last year in fall of 22, and now in fall of 23, when they take the assessment again, have they improved or come off of a RIMP? So are they on track or off track? And so that's why we talk about that part being in arrears, because it's a fall to fall measure. So when you put, those are our percentages. As you can see, we also improved there. So had an improvement, and therefore that's how we get our calculation of the 57.6%.
Is it 57.6 set, or is that going to possibly grow depending on iReady?
It won't show until next year's report card. This is set. She was asking if when they finish taking their assessment now, will that number change? And I was explaining no, that change it won't be reflected until next year's report card in the fall of 2024. This is the final outcome, preliminary final outcome. When they actually produce the report card is when we consider it to be final. But this is the data that we have, and we do not believe that it will change. All right, and our last component, I think I went through all the others, is graduation rate. So some good news, finally, is that we did improve a star rating and graduation rate. So we've gone from 1 star to 2 stars. This is another area that is in arrears. And so as I go through on the next slide, the sub slide, as Dr. Hall calls it, I'll go over the information here. But graduation rate looks at the 4-year graduation rate and the 5-year graduation rate. And so in this, when you see the number 22-23 or the year 22-23, that is what is reported on our report card, but that is not the actual scholars that just finished this June. And the reason is because the graduation rate goes in, they're still calculating it because we have summer graduates as well. So it goes well into September when they give you the final numbers. So it's always a year in arrears. So we believe that our graduation 4-year rate for the scholars that just walked across the stage is going to be 88%. But that will not be reflected on the report card that is released next week. Nonetheless, the data that is reflected on the report card shows that we did improve from 1 star to 2 stars. And as you can see, the 4-year graduation rate is worth 60% of the component, and the 5-year graduation rate is worth 40%. And that data is put together, and we get a composite rating. So as you can see here, I'm breaking it down. And again, it just get very confusing. So we tried to put what graduating class it's referring to up underneath there. But giving you a comparison, so our four-year graduation rate has gone up, and our five-year graduation rate did go down just a little bit. Ideally, your five-year graduation rate would go down because if your four-year graduation rate is going up, then you're graduating more students in 4 years, preferably.
Isn't the five-year graduation rate looking at the students who were in their fifth year, and what percent of those kids who were in their fifth year graduated?
Mhm.
So I'm reading that it's 84.8% of the kids that were fifth year graduated.
Right.
So if I have this, okay. So as my four-year graduation rate goes up, that shouldn't negatively impact my.
It may not impact it, but we may see less. But it's not a direct correlation, for sure.
Well, no, because it's two different pools of kids, right? The five-year graduation rate is all the kids. So for example, this year, there may be 100 kids this year.
But you'll have less kids that need to be in the 5-year.
Well, right. So you can have less kids, but this is a percent.
It's a percent of those kids that are there, though.
So
Correct.
whether it's 50, it's still based on percent. So you're right. We want to have fewer kids in the five-year bucket, and that's my question on this slide. How many kids are in the five-year bucket, last year versus this year, as a percent of eligible grads, right? So, because that's what I'm interested in. Are we successfully reducing the pool of kids who are in the five-year category bucket? And I'm not asking for an answer today. I'll ask it on Monday. But that's what I'm curious about, because I'd love for us to say, well, we had 200 kids that were in their fifth year hoping to graduate in 2021-22, and now this year, we only got 45. That's something to praise, right? I mean, so yeah, that's my question on that slide, is that.
Okay. So we can go back and put the number in, like in parentheses next to it. Wait. So, but yes, we have that information as well with the number of scholars. Okay. So, but again, we are improving it. And here's another graph to show you the trend that we can see here. The blue line is the four-year graduation rate. And as you can see, it went up. This year, that will be reported on the report card. And then, like I just stated, the five-year rate went down on the report card. But the number of scholars that we are looking at in those cohorts, especially for the five-year rate, is a valid point, Dr. Hall. So again, we'll get that number.
Understood, because originally when you were speaking, as I was understanding it, was that if the four-year graduation rate increased, then the five-year graduation rate would decrease. That's what I think you pointed out, and so I'm still trying to get clarity, because in my understanding, and so I need you to walk me through it, I'm thinking if you take a cohort of graduates for that year, that those who matriculate on within 4 years become that four-year number. And those who have not matriculated within that year, now they're on the fifth year.
So think of it this way. So this is easy calculation. So school X this year has 100 kids who are seniors. Well, so 50 of those kids might be in their fourth year. 20 might be in their fifth year. And some of them that might be in their sixth year, right? So she's saying of the 20 kids who are in their fifth year, this is what their graduation rate was. The kids in that class this is their fourth year. This is what their rate is. That's why I was saying that. Like, there's no relationship between
Right.
fourth year and fifth year, because it's two different pools of students.
Yes. And Dr. Hall helped clarify that point, and then I corrected myself that you're right, there's no correlation necessarily, because it's the number of scholars that percentage is of who's remaining. What is the percentage of them that are? So I still stand behind that we would rather have our four-year graduation rate go up, but I do correct myself that there is no necessarily a correlation between those two. Okay.
Listen, there's room for us to all be right.
Absolutely. So in closing, overall, we expect our calculations give us at least a 2-star rating, is what we believe we will have overall. I started at the beginning saying that I think that we were getting close to where we were pre-COVID. I will state that our report card rating on the 2019 report card, if you pull it up, was a D. And so having a 2-star rating, I know we're not using letter grades, so getting at least a 2-star rating leads me to believe that we are at least where we were if we're using the same comparison in the 2019 school year. Of course, we're still trying to not only recover, but we want to go further than where we were in 2019, and we believe that we have some things in place that will help us to achieve at a higher rating. But this is where we believe that we will be based on the preliminary data that we have. And that's all that I have. Are there any more questions for me?
So are you going to have slides that are going to talk about strategically what we're doing to move the data moving forward? Because when I see, so first off, what we pause. First off, thank you, because this was informative. And my question is, are you going to present any slides that talk about, even at high level, like what initiatives are we involved in district-wide where that are going to allow us to move the achievement number or move, because the early literacy one is the one that jumps out to me the most, is that number.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's our babies, right? Followed closely secondarily by progress. Those are the two areas that, because to me, I'm concerned, and I know we don't have it yet. That's the other one I'm the most interested in, because if we can't even maintain ground, we're still, because anything below 3 stars, that's losing ground still, right? So if we're not even at the point where we're holding the line, that's especially stark in light of the early literacy. Because that early literacy, that's those young kids, they're just getting older year after year, right? So we're running out of time to catch those kids up, right? So that's where, and again, this is as a community. So again, I'm putting my parent community member hat on. Like, I'm not the expert in this. That's you, right? So, but in my mind, if I'm watching this, I want to know, well, what are you guys doing to improve it? Because this is fine presentation, and what are you doing to improve what are you doing to improve it? So I can go back and look to see if my child's schools is how they're doing, but I just want to more broadly go, well, what are we doing? Early literacy is a single star. What are we doing to address that?
Some of the things, it's just so much in this to be able to speak to it. But one of the things that districts, the letters training with the younger level teachers to help to improve literacy rates. So these are things and programs that's put in place. But again, to really get to the heart of the matter, you have to engage not only because when you think higher level, the teachers, because the teachers are going to give you the real picture of what they're facing and the challenges in moving in. Central office is one thing, but if you don't go into to get the real answer, you have to have real teachers. I'm not talking about just executive I'm talking about real teachers that's doing classroom work, that's assessing these kids to be able to speak to the challenges that they're facing from the various clusters. Because some may come from homes where they've been read to since they were little. So literacy, so that's going to give them a leg up, right? And so you have to go to the various clusters, and I'm really thinking the only way to really get at good solutions that's not just another training, another professional development. You have to get to the heart of the matter. And I'm just saying there, I think she can do a report all day and come up with some things, in education every time and turn around it's a new strategy or new curriculum. But I think to get to what it seems like that you keep knocking at is another type of meeting. That Kaver can do her work, but I think it's groundwork with teachers and classrooms in a very personal, real way.
And to that point, I think that's well said. I think but that's why the point making is, I'm asking for sort of high level, sort of what strategy are we looking at high level, right? Not so much in the weeds, which is, I'm understanding letters training could be part of the answer to that question. Oh, well, we're engaging in district-wide letters training.
Right.
Boom. You know, now there's more to unpack there, right? But give me something neat, right? So like like letters training, right? So we didn't do we did that last year in this district, right? We only did like 2 grades.
We did, and we're finishing up the other 2 grades right now. So grades 2 and 3 now.
But we're broadening it out now, right? We're going to do letter training for more grade levels.
Correct.
Can you do it for kindergarten and first grade?
So we did kindergarten and first grade last year, and now we're doing second and third, and any new teachers that we may have gotten at grades K and 1 also. But yes, I can definitely give you a slide or 2 that comes over some high-level initiatives of what we're doing in the district to affect this report card, because it's affected overall. We have graduation right here, we have early literacy, we have achievement in reading, math, science. At the high school level, I have 6 end-of-course areas. So there's a lot there. But yes, we can definitely pull out some of the, just as a reminder, some of the higher, more well-known initiatives that are taking place in the district. We could be talking about attendance. Remember, chronic absenteeism was a part of this. We could talk about our initiatives, or we talk about the Stay in the Game in our partnership there, the Proving Ground partnership. So when you talk about certain things that you all are approving that we're doing, or we talked about the industry credentials and getting more scholars to meet the competency in order to improve the graduation rate. So yes, I can definitely do that. That was not the initial plan, but I can definitely add in and just, again, remind the community as well as the full board about some of the things that we're doing that in turn, obviously, we hope impact
because
our report card.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah.
To say,
Yeah.
just for the layperson
Yeah.
to see, because if you just end it here, it's like, okay. So as a person, as a parent, I want to be able to look and see, okay, well, at my school, at Helen Arnold, we're doing a letters training. So, I think just a few bullet points under each of the 5 areas that says, boom, boom, this is an area that we're addressing in this manner to improve moving forward, instead of just leaving it.
Yeah. No, right.
Absolutely.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
So leave us with some hope, because there's a lot of good work happening. So this is an opportunity to showcase and highlight what the work is being done in the district. So
Well, also too, and we get asked these questions, right? So like we get calls as board members. I saw X, Y, and Z. What are you guys doing about it? Like, for me to say, well, I saw the report just like you did, but I don't know what we're doing because we didn't talk about it, right? So, yeah, I think you two wanted to jump in. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because there are great things that's happening. Like, as Ms. Caver said, we've approved them, and it's been discussed at different board meetings. It's still going to come back to, and you can tell we can have these nice presentations and talk about what we're doing, but it's still going to come to it becoming actualized at the building level, and teachers owning it, believing in it, that because we can come up with programs that are supposed to work, research-based programs, and then it can trickle down as a mandate to what teachers are supposed to do. But to see the improvements, because if I'm a parent, okay, good, you taught this, so next year I want to see gains. Okay, so you did it in kindergarten first, it's second and third, so I should be seeing improvement in literacy. Those letters aren't speaking to that. Those numbers, so that ain't working. But it's a good program, right? So in order to really get, because I'm thinking action, I'm about action plans and steps, because you should see it, right? The fruit will be, you bear the fruit if it's the real deal, right? So in order to get to it, this district has great things that have been put in place, that have been implemented from high level. In order to really see how that matriculates to gains. And for parents, because this is plain language, anyone can understand. A parent, that teacher in that classroom is going to say either this is how we need to do our professional, this is the issue with this is great programming, this is great professional development, we want to do it, but here's the deal why this is not being executed in the spirit as excellent as it should be, because these are some other, and so until that is addressed, it's going to still be here. The numbers are still going to look at because the district has money. It talks about, no, they're doing a lot of training in the district. They're buying new curriculum. A lot of stuff is happening. Teachers are the quarterback. You don't win a game without the quarterbacks. So if we don't really know what is really happening, and that's what we talking about, if for stakeholders and people want to know the gains, that's the discussion. Whether it is, violence, whether it is not food, services that we need, other wraparound services throughout the school. That's what we need the community needs to know more so than all these extra reports about, yeah, we can talk about that, but when we're talking about really moving the needle, we have to deal with it at the building level with the people who are in the buildings doing the work, and they inform. It's like data-driven instruction. It's data-driven action plan because they're informing us. Yep. It got to be top up, bottom up. Bottom up. Thank you, sir. It's just a lot with it, and I think we have to be very cognizant of that when we're doing these instructional policy meetings and when we're having Dr. Cavers and people produce these PowerPoints and asking these questions, because I believe we all here really want to see change and we really want to see gains, and it's more than just having her go back and put this on a PowerPoint. If we're not going into the buildings and seeing, okay, how are we working together to get this work done? How can we help you as a board? As a board member, that's what I want to do. What do we need to do to help you, teacher, in the classroom to make sure you're reaching the kids that you're serving? How then do we come sit with our superintendent? How are we making this happen?
So
because
I'll tell
this
you.
is...
Yeah, so I think that's well said. I think, so a couple observations. So this is my 4th year on this board, almost ended my 4-year term, right? I've been in a lot of buildings in 4 years. And, one of the things that I hear is one of the most common areas of concern that are brought up is the disconnect between central office and what happens on the front lines, right? And I don't raise that point to point fingers at anybody, right? But to your point, right? We can have the best programs being developed down here, but if they're not bought into by the people that are in the schools, right? If they're not executed, it doesn't matter how smart the people are in this building if we don't have. That's right. I mean, so to that point, the other thing too is, born and raised in this town like most of you, right? APS graduate like most of you, right? How long we been a D or 2-star school district, right? And so to me, I think it's a balancing act. We want to talk about the good things that are going on, right? But we also have got to be more just real about their areas of opportunity and where their urgency is at and where the fire is at, because nothing changes in education without passion, right? So that's when I walk through buildings, I see some teachers who are very passionate. I see them who are not very passionate. Same thing in this building. There are people, not going to name names, but there are times when I walk these buildings, people, I'm like, that person's really passionate about what they do. And others that I'm just like, they're just doing their job. They're just doing their job. And that's fine. But doing the job is not going to move anything, right? I mean, so that's why for me it's like I'm looking for the passion. Like, where is the fire? Where is the passion? And I think that and if we're gonna move this data, like to your point, Carla, we got to walk into buildings and see passionate educators, right? That's right. But you aren't going to see passionate. That's right. That's right. So yep.
But everyone has to be. You can't. Yes. And I know this meeting is going on, but I'm in agreement. I'm just saying you cannot do it, and we cannot work in silos.
I agree. Yep.
It is collaborative.
Yep.
Teachers, and I'm not talking about cherry pick teachers. Mm-hmm. I'm saying you're going in a 3rd grade classroom with the 3rd grade teachers,
Yep.
not someone that's on the commit necessarily that's on this. No, the teacher that's going to have those kids sitting down taking a test. That's who need to be at the table.
That's right.
Teacher, this is not a trick question. You're not being set up for nothing. What is the real lay of the land like in your classroom? Okay, how do we work? We're better together. And if that is not happening, I don't care. You can have as many of these things up. They can research as many professional development. I've been in education over 20 years. And you can have the best of the best professional development. You can spend a top dollar. Mm-hmm. If you're not connecting with them teachers, if this is not it here, and we're not discerning to say, okay, well, you're not. Because like you said, it's those who on fire and those who not. We want fire starters in our district. Mm-hmm. And great teachers do too. Right. They want to look to the left or to the right of their hallway and see teachers with the spirit of excellence just like them too.
And it's easier to be on fire, to your point, when you're at the table in developing and crafting the solutions, right? Your point's well taken about the committees, and this is not, again, it's not throwing shade, but again, oftentimes it does tend to be the same people on the same committees year in and year out, right? So, correct, that's right. So really that's
Doing the same thing and expect different results.
that's right. You know, so, and I just get tired of hearing us say, not us, but people saying, well, this takes time. Well, these kids don't have 5 years to spend in third grade. They get 1 year in third grade, and then they're getting passed to fourth grade. So that's right. So, Dr. Warren, I know you've been trying to get in.
I know we're running by, but what I see is a compromise, and I agree with everything everyone is saying. But one element of this, as a new board member, that I feel could be something powerful and different, and maybe not for Monday, but looking ahead. And the reason why goals are so important is, as a parent, I'm going to look at this and say, what can I do as a mom, with my PTA, with everyone, to help with this? And I know, depending on what our goals are, achievement, we would need 14 points to move up a star, and at 2.5 points a year, that's going to be a hard grasp, right? Progress, we're still figuring out on that one. Early literacy, we were 0.4% for that, and 2 of those measurements come from student performance on iReady, which is really, really fascinating to me as a mother, just with my mom hat on, because for years and years and years, we've had device-free weekends. We don't use, we have times where, we've been told, oh, keep your kids off the device. Well, now my kindergartner is taking a test, and he needs his device, and his technological literacy is being measured along with his actual reading level. And so even though maybe my child is great with a book, he might not be great taking this iReady test. And so there are things that possibly I could be doing at home, and I could be encouraging my friends to do at home if we say, oh, our district goal is to, spend 10 minutes on iReady from this to this, and we do over the winter breaks and things like that. Those types of challenges is a way that we can pull the whole community together and not put all the pressure on the teachers.
Well,
We
yeah.
do that. We do that as a district.
Yeah.
Over the Christmas break, we
We
have
do.
little celebrations, so that goes, we do that.
But to your other point, though, let me pull this out real quick, because this is where you brought it up. I was going to bring it up too. But so in healthcare, we get data from the government that says your readmission rate was 18%, goal is 13.5. Our first question was, well, how many patients are we talking about? Oh, well, the difference between 18% and 39 is 77 patients. So we need 77 fewer patients being readmitted in 30 days over the course of the year to get down to our goal, right? That's in my head when I listen. It's like that's the translation in layman's terms, right? We were 10 percentage points short on X measure. How many students is that we talking about? We need to move a minimum of 122 students from A to B in order for us to go to that level. That's not in here, but that's where, and maybe that's not for Monday, but maybe that's the follow-up. But because this is all education speak, right? So, and we get it because we've been sitting around the table for years, right? And you have PhD education, right? And you've been a teacher, and you too. But for Diane and I, we're learning this in 4 years. She knows better than I. She's 12 years PTA, so I guess I'm the dumb one here. But the point is that how are we translating this into and even at the building level, your building score was this. So we got to get 37 more kids in your building to this level in order to move your building's star score from 2 to 3. Do they know that?
They do.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
So that's that. So to me, that's what I like to know at the district level. As you're rolling it up, district wide, hey, district wide, we got to move 445 students district wide. So that's what I'd like to know. But I know we're over time. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good conversation. Good conversation.
I'll stop there.
All right.